How to be assertive without being aggressive. This is a really important topic because when you're in a situation where you want to assert yourself, it's hard to know if you're going too hard or if you're being too harsh or too strong. Most of my clients tend to be a little bit more on the soft, passive side. They have a history of being a people pleaser or a pushover or a softie. Sometimes when they learn to be assertive, they overcompensate and they actually become a little bit aggressive. In other situations, a person is suffering from extreme thinking, so they feel like to be assertive, they need to be very aggressive. And in fact, that's their interpretation of what being assertive means. And so innocently, they're trying to be assertive, but really they're in fight mode. So we tried to get them out of fawn, which is people pleasing, and then we now they're in fight. And so when it comes to expressing themselves, they're a little bit more aggressive than what's necessary. So I had an example like this that I went through with a client. Um, he said from his perspective, I was 1 minute late for our meeting. And so he's like, you were 1 minute late for our meeting. Um, so we have to be able to break down why and how this could be more aggressive than actually assertive. Because when survivors are first trying to set boundaries, they sometimes aren't sure where to draw the line. They're not sure how to express themselves in a way that they can be understood and respected. And um, they're not sure really what even their objective is in doing it exactly. And so we have to be able to identify these things so that we can shy away from being aggressive and we can make sure we're actually being assertive. So aggressive is different than passive aggression. Passive aggression is where you don't want to say anything directly. So you just say a bunch of things under your breath or subconsciously in your actions, like sucking your teeth or making little remarks and jokes and things instead of just being direct and saying, "Hey, I don't like that you're giving me more work." You just make a bunch of comments instead of getting to the point. So the person is supposed to pick up somehow that you're upset. They're supposed to use CIA encryption tracking to figure out how you actually feel, right? Or they're supposed to overhear you saying a remark. This is very, very toxic. So we want to be shy away from being passive aggressive. It's better to address a person directly, but there's ways to do it in a way to make sure that we're not being aggressive. Some of the ways that we learn about in our healing course and our psychotherapy 201 course, and also in the book Mind by Roman Zanoni, in the second chapter on relationships. It breaks down the EAR technique and it gets into the details of being assertive. So, one of the things it mentions is that you're scheduling an appointment to bring up an issue. This is really important because it allows the other person to get into the frame of mind of listening. When you try to address an issue in the moment, you can risk being aggressive. So let's say you're tired of the way your husband puts the dishes away. Maybe he just clunks them too hard. And so if you try to say something at the moment that he's doing it because it's fresh in your mind and you're actually feeling the emotion, you can risk being aggressive, right? So you go, "Hey, can you stop clinging the plates like that?" You see the issue there? Because we try to address it right while he's doing it, our emotions are very high. And then the way that we address him could kind of be less than respectful or a little too harsh or a little too direct. Our tone could be a little higher than we originally would have wanted it to be. And now it can kind of put the situation in a frame like we're having an argument or starting an argument, prompting him to defend himself. And remember, as soon as someone defends themselves, we're basically in a fight, right? And so in the evasion of an argument, the evade technique, which is the E of the EAR, we try not to get drawn into defending ourselves. And that's how we avoid getting into a fight or an argument with someone. So in this situation, it's better to actually, instead of yelling at him in the moment, hey, can you stop? Right? Or, hey, I really have a problem with, or listen, I'm not going to tolerate. It's actually better to wait, walk away, get your pen, get your notebook, write down. Okay, I need to talk to my husband about the way he's cleaning the dishes. Okay, good. And then when we're outside of that issue, you approach him and say, babe, can I talk to you? I have something I need to talk to you about. If you want, we can talk after dinner. And then you schedule the appointment tonight, sometime in the near future. The scheduling of the appointment helps you to mitigate the way that you're approaching the person so that it's not too aggressive. Okay. So schedule appointments to bring up issues, criticisms, including setting boundaries if possible. Sometimes we can't schedule an appointment to set a boundary, but something like that, we're able to. This is not an emergency, right? So that's what you want to look for, the opportunity to really sit down with a person and make sure they're in the right frame of mind. But then you need to identify your objective. What does that mean? What is an objective? An objective is a goal. So you need to know what your actual goal is in approaching a person. Sometimes a trauma survivor feels like their goal is to prove a point. But if you go into a situation with the goal to prove a point, you'll be sorely disappointed and you'll probably get into an argument because you have to divorce yourself from the outcome. You have to divorce yourself from the outcome. Do you guys know what that means? It means that you don't worry so much about what's going to happen when you say what you say, how the person's going to react as much. That's not your goal. Your goal is to do something that you need to do. And we'll get into the proper objectives. But an improper objective would be to try to prove a point. Um, the other person has their own perspective of matters. And so you will be sorely disappointed when you are faced with having to understand their perspective of things or see that they don't really agree or understand with your perspective of things. So you don't want to go in with the objective of just, I want to prove a point. Along those lines, I want to be right or I want to prove that I'm right, help him to understand that I'm right, prove them wrong, um, show someone how tough I am. These would be objectives that will cause you to probably be too aggressive in your approach. And it is definitely a problem if we're too aggressive in our attempt to be assertive. It's definitely a problem if we're too aggressive in our attempt to be assertive because we're not going to be able to get a good outcome if we're too aggressive. It's going to cause a person to defend themselves or shut down, and it really won't give us what we needed. So, what are some good objectives? There's one main objective when you assert yourself, when you assert a standard or a boundary. There's one main objective, and that's to give the other person the opportunity to change in order to avoid losing you. Your main objective when you assert a boundary is actually loving. You're giving the other person an opportunity to change or to change their behavior or to do the thing that you need them to do to meet your need in order to avoid losing you. There's asserting a boundary and then there's enforcing a boundary. When you enforce a boundary, that means that you are walking away. Specifically, you're removing access to your resources. So when you enforce a boundary, that's it. It's done. You have now walked away. You've now removed access to your resources. That means you kicked them out of your house. You kicked them out of your car. You kicked them out of your club, your business. You fired them from the job, or you've quit the job, or you've left, or left their house, or left their car, or left their business. You removed yourself. You've ended the friendship. This terminates the relationship. That is enforcement of boundaries. When you terminate the relationship, done, bam. That is the nuclear option. So, where possible, as judicious kings and queens, we want to be slow about using the nuclear option. Does that make sense? Many trauma survivors have hit that red button really quick, really, really quick. They've terminated a relationship based on someone doing one small particular thing. And sometimes they don't even tell the person. If they do tell the person, they're still just decided, no, it's totally over. It's totally over. Why? Because, and it'll be something possibly that could have been forgiven or overlooked, or possibly could have been communicated as a boundary, but they're quick to end the relationship over the situation, right? So that is also being over aggressive. We want to be slow about necessarily taking the nuclear option unless we actually see there is abuse. And abuse is generally going to be a total disrespect for you, your boundaries, a misuse of you. That's abuse, mistreatment. So when someone just does something that violates your standards one time, that's not abuse. So for instance, if your therapist is by your estimation 1 minute late for the appointment, for your very first appointment, you should not interpret that as abuse. That is not mistreatment. It is not a repeated violation of your standards. But sometimes when we're trauma survivors and we're abuse survivors, we interpret every violation as a form of abuse, as a potential. So we don't know how to keep ourselves safe. So we're constantly cutting off relationships or being overly aggressive in our assertions because we're like, hey, 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 are you trying to hurt me? Are you disrespecting me? Are you? But when someone violates your standards, it's not automatically that they were trying to disrespect you. Sometimes someone can violate your standards because they just weren't aware of your standards, or sometimes they just have different standards, and that has to be communicated. For instance, in the case of the 1 minute late situation, we have different standards because I find if someone is 60 seconds late to an appointment to be acceptable, it's not something that I would raise an issue over. And so if someone raises an issue over me being 60 seconds late for the appointment, I don't feel that I've violated any of my personal standards. But if they're informing me that I've violated their standards, then I can acknowledge that. Okay, it seems like I violated your standards. But we need the ability in order to avoid being overly assertive. I'm sorry, overly aggressive. We need the ability to ascertain the difference between our personal standards and a universal rule law or what was abuse. So that's what I'm going to try to help you with here in our discussion. Identifying objective, again, there's one main objective when you are asserting yourself. Did you catch what that was? Did anyone get that down in their notes? One main objective when you assert yourself. I'll give it to you again. You're giving the other person the opportunity to change to avoid losing you. So you don't have to take the nuclear option, which is terminate the relationship. So You are trying to communicate your needs. That's part of your objective. You are seeking mutual understanding. That should be part of your objective sometimes. In some cases, you have people who are kind of like tough, they're bullies, they're abusers, something like that, and you kind of have to deal with them. So, in some cases, you are trying to create resistance so that it will make your life better. For instance, at work, if you got a bully that's always coming in, giving you assignments that aren't a part of your job description, when you start saying things like, is that a part of my job description? Can you show me where that is in my job description? Can you give me that in writing? Can you write me an email on that? Can you send me a memo on this? What I'm doing is I'm creating resistance, but it's a skillful assertion because the way that I'm doing it, you don't even notice that I'm asserting a boundary, do you? I'm just asking you for my needs. Making the needs within the confines of the professional setting. So I'm just saying, oh yeah, can you give me that in writing, or can you show me that in my, you know, is that a part of my job description? And when I do that, what I'm actually doing is I'm creating resistance for the bully. And so the bully sees that I'm not easy to pick on, and they kind of go pick on someone else, or they hesitate before they pick on me next time, which does what for me? It makes the environment better. I'm pushing for elbow room in my environment. Does that make sense? And so now my work environment's more tolerable for me, uh, which essentially boils down to the same thing. I'm giving the other person, the opportunity to change in order to avoid losing me, because essentially I'm going to have to quit this job. Remember that nuclear option leads to a loss for them and you as well. Because once you terminate a relationship, they lose access to you. And that should be something that you're not quick to do to just anyone, to make people lose access to you. You're willing to do it, of course, but you don't want to be overly aggressive and doing it without conscious reasoning. But you're also losing access to their resources when you terminate a relationship. So remember that. So if I terminate my relationship with my boss because I don't like the way that they act, obviously I lose access to the resources, which is a paycheck, which is a very valuable resource. So it's reasonable in some cases that I might say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to elbow for room by using skilled assertiveness. And every time he comes and picks on me, I'm going to do things that create resistance for him, like make him send it to me in writing. And then when he does it, I'm going to email him and make him confirm that he asked me for this and see, so he sees that I'm making a record and right, I'm doing these things to create this resistance. And that tells bullies, that gives them this feeling like, ah, that guy is not easy to pick on, or that lady's not easy to pick on. And they leave you alone to a degree. They stop picking on you as much. So sometimes that can be a useful tool. But understand what your objective is so that you're not overly aggressive. When you go with just the feelings, the emotions in the moment, it can cause you to be overly aggressive. When you hold back and don't say anything and bite your tongue and bite your tongue and bite your tongue and bite your tongue, it's going to cause you to blow up and you'll be overly aggressive. Right. So my boss keeps coming, he keeps giving me things, keeps giving me too much, he keeps giving me too much, he keeps giving me too much. And I just keep biting my tongue and I don't say anything. And I'm just, oh, okay, okay, yes, sir. But really inside, I'm seething and I'm building up animosity. You don't want this. You don't want this because you're going to explode. And then one day, something really extreme is going to happen. Maybe I'm going to walk off the job without thinking about it when I wasn't really ready to. Or I may give that boss a piece of my mind. You're an abuser. You're a terrible person. You don't. And now I feel sorry. I have to apologize for the way I behaved. You could end up getting fired, right? So don't bite your tongue, bite your tongue, bite your tongue, bite your tongue, bite your tongue. That's not a good strategy. It will cause you to be over aggressive. Instead, we want to nip things in the bud, right? So when there's small violations, we set that appointment, we go in and talk. By the way, this is a very punitive and effective way of creating space for yourself at work with coworkers, employees, people who are subordinate to you, and your superiors. Scheduling meetings with them to talk about things. Oh my God. Oh, it's such a dread. Nobody wants to be called into a one-on-one meeting with you to hear what your thing is that is your issue. And the more skilled you are with it, the better. Okay. So here's, by the way, what a one-on-one meeting at work, if you're wondering how that would sound. You schedule this thing, you go into the conference room together. It's just you and the other person, and you go, hey, I noticed that when I label my lunch in the refrigerator, and then I come in a little bit later, some of the lunch has been eaten. And some of the people are saying that it's you. I don't know that it's you, but I just wanted to reach out to you and see, do you know anything about this? Is everything okay? And that is an example of skilled assertiveness. I didn't directly accuse, I didn't yell. I put something in a question form, and as a result, we get a discussion going, but it's still very nerve-wracking to the other person in most cases, and they don't want to run into it, and they start respecting your boundaries. You can do that with a coworker, a subordinate, or a superior. Okay. Call a meeting with them, discuss the situation head on, but use skilled assertiveness. How do we know what skilled assertiveness is? Use the techniques that are listed in the book or in the Psychotherapy 201 course. Okay. So let's say somebody violated your boundaries, that violated your standards. What are your options? Well, you can not raise an issue. Not raising an issue means that you can either just totally forgive and forget, because a lot of times you ask yourself, could I live with this? Ah, it's fine. Got to do that a lot in a marriage. Got to let some things go. If you can live with it, it's fine, right? But in all relationships, it's not always a time to raise an issue. So ask yourself, is this really a big enough deal that I need to raise an issue over it? Or could I totally forgive and forget? And that means that I would have no more resentment about it. I'll just pretend like it never even happened and wipe their slate clean. That's a loving thing to do, and it's a necessary skill. So make sure you have that and you're incorporating that. Forgiving and forgetting. A good example of this would be around appointments. Someone's late, someone misses an appointment, things like that. It's a great opportunity to just forgive and forget because it's so incredibly common. Everyone does it, including you, make mistakes when it comes to appointments. That's a good time to exercise that forgive and forget. In some cases, you can forgive but not forget, meaning you're not going to carry resentment about the situation. You're not going to raise the issue, but you're going to keep a mental note that you're never going to trust this person in this particular way again. Because for you, the violation was enough not to raise an issue, but to just move away from this person. So again, you can forgive and not forget, which means that you're going to change your behavior around this person. Let's use an example. You got a friend, you gave them money to pay for a ticket that they bought on their credit card, but the money that you gave them turned out to be more than the ticket costs. So they owe you something back, but they never told you that they owe you money back. They just held on to the difference. They never told you that the ticket costs was less than what you paid, right? So for you, maybe this is a violation. You have to discern for you what level violation it is. For some, they would say, I don't care. I don't care about money. This friendship means more to me than anything. I'm going to forgive and forget. Other people might say, I'm going to forgive this, so I'm not going to raise an issue, but I'm not going to forget that this person cannot be trusted with money. So I'm going to change my behavior around this person. And I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to raise an issue, but I'm not giving them my money again. Or you can set the boundary wherever you want. Sometimes there's situations where you actually say, I think I'm just going to pull away totally from this person, just kind of fade to the background, and hopefully this person doesn't call me or try to talk to me anymore. But I'm not going to raise an issue with them. These are all your decisions to make. Okay. So you have to take some time and consciously decide. But let's say you decide, no, I need to raise the issue. I need to talk to them. Identify your objective, trying to give them the opportunity to change to avoid losing me. That's my objective. Not prove a point, be right, show that I'm tough. If you do that, you're going to go in too hot. You're going to go in with, that's not right. That's wrong what you did. You kept the money. That's wrong. Ooh, pause. What's the problem here? Well, one, we're coming in hot, which is aggressive, which is going to trigger them to defend themselves, which is going to start a fight. But besides that, there's cognitive distortion here. We're engaging in generalization and universality, which means that instead of recognizing that this is your standard, you're going in telling them that what they did is universally wrong. And that's not accurate. I want you to move forward understanding that the world is not made up of universal rights and wrongs. It's made up of individual standards, individual rules, regulations, and procedures depending on the company you're in, the country you're in, the city you're in, the person you're dealing with. Again, there are no universal rights and wrongs. That's how I want you to approach life. Like there are no universal rights and wrongs, only individual standards. Does that make sense? That's how you should approach life. Why? Because you need to approach things from personal authority, not from trying to gain authority from the rest of the universe. Hey, that's wrong, guys, right? You're calling your friends. They didn't give me the difference of the money. Isn't that wrong? Aren't they wrong for that? No, that's not the way to handle it. When you go at them with the universality, you're already with a flawed argument. So the person's like, oh, I didn't think that was wrong at all, considering I'm the person who was facilitating the tickets, keeping the difference to me didn't seem like a problem. They could have different standards. So it's better to come from your personal authority and say, hey, listen, when you kept the money, that bothered me. That wasn't okay with me for you to have kept the difference. Do you understand? Individual standards. Stop telling people that they're right or they're wrong or what they did was disrespectful. It's up to you. You decide what is your standard of respect, beneficial, detrimental to you, right or wrong for you. And then you come to them from that standpoint. Hey, for me, this doesn't work. This made me feel uncomfortable. Come from your personal authority, not from some idea of what is universally right and wrong. Also, using the skills of assertiveness. Remember, we're hoping to seek a mutual understanding. So I want to avoid an argument. So rather than putting it in a statement form, hey, what you did is not okay with me, I'm going to take it a step further and I'm going to switch it into a question to make it softer. That's skilled assertiveness. So the way I would approach the situation is saying something more like, hey, it came to my attention that you kept the difference in the ticket money. I was just wanted to reach out to you and see, is everything okay? Why do I do that? Why am I saying, is everything okay? Why am I taking it and making this question out of it? Because I need to allow the other person to save face. Because I need to allow the other person an opportunity to be able to avoid the argument. And so when I phrase it like a question, hey, I just wanted, hey, for instance, I could just say, is it, did I give you enough money? I'm putting it as a question. Did you need more money from me for that situation? Was there anything left over? When I put it as a question, this is skilled assertiveness. And yes, it's clever because it allows the other person to potentially say, oh, yeah, I was going to give you the change back. Or Yeah, yeah, everything's fine. No, there's no problem. Let me explain. And perhaps they're going to put me onto some piece of information that I didn't understand, right? Because maybe I'm not right. Let's keep that in mind. Maybe I think I have all the information, but I don't. And do you see how I saved myself also? I'm helping them save face if they're wrong, but I'm helping me save face if I'm wrong. What if I'm wrong? What if I find out that they actually put extra money in for my ticket and didn't say anything to me? And I had all the information wrong. And I'm coming in hot. Hey, listen, it's not okay with me. What you did with the ticket? Oh, yeah, I know what you did. And then they hit me with I actually put more money in. And then you're sitting there looking stupid, feeling awful, right? Allow people to save face. It allows you to save face as well. That's how you would want to be talked to. You would rather someone come soft with a question. Hey, is everything okay with such and such? Hey, did we have enough? Did we end up coming up with enough? That's skillful assertiveness. Okay. It's not always a question. Again, like I've used examples of where you switch instead of a question, you switch it to a statement, right? So if I'm going to ask my husband, did he pay the bill? Instead of asking him as a question, hey, did you pay that bill? Which then makes him almost like he's accountable to me, which could be potentially emasculating to him, where it has to be like, yeah, or no, I forgot. I'm going to help him to save face. I'm going to dignify him by putting it in a clever statement. Hey, just so you just wanted to remind you, don't forget to pay that one bill. Clever. Because now I allow him to save face. Hey, babe, don't forget that one bill. And now he can be like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I didn't forget. I didn't forget. Right? Skillful assertiveness. How do we figure out how to approach people like this? Well, one, we gotta take the 201 psychotherapy course or get the book so we can actually see how this breaks down. And two, we need to take the time to think, to consciously reason on how we're approaching someone. You're coming in too hot, too aggressive if you're emotional, if you're trying to prove a point, if you're trying to show how tough you are, if you don't know how to rephrase things from a statement to a question or question to a statement to make it softer, if you're not trying to help them to save face, if you're not letting it go once they've apologized or once they've already acknowledged the situation, if you're nitpicking, so that once you already bring up the issue, then you start nitpicking the way they're responding to the issue. Oh, you're just making excuses. Oh, what was that? Oh, I don't like your tone. I don't like the way you're talking to me now. And now what are you doing? You're just creating more issues on top of the issues on top of the issues. That's never going to be productive. That's toxic. The moment you start interrupting and talking over them, you're coming in too hot, over aggressive. They say, "Oh, yeah, I did have a little bit of extra money. Yeah, so why didn't I get it?" You're over top of them. Or you feel like they said something wrong. No, there wasn't any extra money. Well, that's not what I heard. I heard someone else said it. Slow down. Slow down. That's why we call the meeting. If you use straw man arguments, which is where you argue against a distorted version of what they just said. Um, so they say to you, hey, look, I'm not a thief. And you go, I never said you were a thief. Pause. Let me slow it down and dissect that for you. He didn't say that you said he was a thief. So when he says, hey, look, I'm not a thief, and you say, I never said you were a thief, you are engaging in a straw man argument. It is a underhanded debate technique that is used to destabilize your opponent by making them argue against a point that is not even the actual point. Because now you're making the point that he's telling you that you said something that you never said, but that was never his point. His point was that he's not a thief, not that you said he's not. You see what you're doing there? So avoid the manipulation and the finding something to argue with. You're coming in too hot. All that is too aggressive. And please keep in mind, it's just loving to allow people to save face when you address something, when you have to be assertive about something. It's not always about showing how tough you are and that, oh, I called them to the mat, man. I told them exactly, I'm so tough, I'm so brave. That's not really what being assertive is about. It's about communicating, giving an opportunity to the other person to be able to change, to avoid losing you. It's loving. So keep that in mind.